Rob Westerveld, editor of IHS Chemical Week, joining you from the 2017 IHS Market World Petrochemical Conference. And I'm delighted to be joined this afternoon by Bob Patel, CEO of LyondellBasell. Bob, thanks for joining us.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be back.
Great. Start with a broad question. What are you seeing in your key markets so far in 2017?
So far, demand seems to be very robust. We're seeing demand growth globally. Yeah. I think generally there's expectations of improving economic environment. On the supply side in our markets, you've seen that some of the expansions have been delayed incrementally, and so what we find here is that markets are quite firm. Yep. With good demand and some delays in the new expansions.
Talk about your view of sort of managing capital expenditures in this environment, given where the oil to gas ratio has fallen, where U.S. capital expenditures costs are. How difficult does that make it to plan or for scenario planning? And what do you think that means for capital investment going forward in the U.S. once this first wave rolls off?
Well, if you think about ethylene crackers, back when the decisions were made to build the crackers that are being started up or will start up in the next 18 months, that was an oil price environment where we had oil to gas ratios that were 30 plus. Yep. So very high oil, the advantage was very clear. And at the time those decisions were made, we had estimates of capital which have turned out to be on the low side, I think. So now we're in an environment today where we have a lower oil to gas ratio, higher capital costs. So the way we're thinking about it is we're thinking about really scenario planning around different oil to gas scenarios, co-product values, how ethane supply will develop after these new crackers are built. You know, net of all of that, my sense is that the U.S. will still have an advantage. The question is really how great is that advantage, and how should we think about more normal capital expenditures so we can arrive at a return that is reasonable and compensates us for the risk that we might take to build a new cracker.
Okay, so I guess overall the U.S. is still fairly advantaged, but you don't expect, I guess, is muted the right word, or going forward for the second wave? I mean,
yeah, I think it's just not as obvious as it was back in 12 and 13 because the ratios were so high. Yeah. And so now I think this requires a lot more thought, and ultimately that seems like an environment where you would not see another wave of investment.
Okay. Can you talk about LyondellBasell's expansion plans? I think you've managed to debottleneck your ethylene capacity in the U.S. by 20%. How has that progressed, and what's next for LyondellBasell?
Well, we're pleased with the debottleneck program that we've undertaken. As you say, we've added about 2.2 billion pounds, so call it 1 million tons of ethylene here in the U.S. We finished the last project at Corpus Christi, and we're ramping up. Second quarter, we should be at full rates on that project. We've announced a polyethylene project. We'd like to do another one perhaps to build up our integration downstream from ethylene. Having said that, we still have one more ethylene debottleneck that we can do at Channelview, about 550 million pounds, and I think we will do that one early in the next decade. Beyond that, we're thinking about the C3 value chain, thinking about propylene, polypropylene. We're advancing a PO/TBA project, which we hope to make a final investment decision sometime in Q3 this year. So a lot going on the organic side, and I think still sort of methodical, disciplined, and very return-minded.
Great. Bob, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you.
Great.